Hi, and welcome back to Focal Point AFR Talk. Brian Fisher is my name. Great to have you in the conversation. If you want to join the conversation about origins, 888-589-8840 is the number to call. 888-589-8840. If you've got an observation, comment about the issue of origins, the debate over origins, if you watched the debate last night between Ken Ham and Bill Nye, and you have some reaction, some observation to that, I sent a whole batch of tweets out during that debate. In fact, that debate was the leading topic on Facebook, and it was the leading trending topic on Twitter. So it was a huge social media event yesterday, as well as a major media event. And we'll talk a little bit more about that when we talk to Kim Ham. Remember, at the bottom of the next hour, 2:30 Central Time, have Ken Ham on to kind of do Monday morning quarterbacking over the debate. But let me just read you a couple of quotes. Remember, I said there's a very simple template you can use to defeat Darwin in 4 easy steps. First law, second law, fossils and genes. Let's do that again. First law, second law, fossils and genes. Almost like a little nursery rhyme. Makes it easy to remember. First law, second law, fossils and genes. And the point I made about genes is that genetic mutations is the only mechanism that evolutionists have to convert energy into increasingly complex life forms. They've got nothing else because evolution has never been observed. Nobody's ever seen one species transfer into another species. It's never been observed. You know, Darwin talked about his finches and the length of their beaks. You know what the problem with that? They were finches when he started, and they were finches when he was done. They were finches the whole time. They were finches. They didn't become something else. And you got maybe you heard about the peppered moths, on the trees over there in England, and then they have the Industrial Revolution, and the trees were white and the moths were dark, and then Industrial Revolution and all the stuff in the air, the tree trunks turn dark, and the white moths get picked off, and they turn dark. Well, you know what the problem, and that's supposed to be an evidence of evolution. You know what the problem with that is? They were peppered moths when they started. They were peppered moths in the middle, and they were peppered moths when the whole thing was over. They were always peppered moths. So evolution, where one species turns into another, has never, ever been observed. Number to call if you want to join our conversation about this is 888-589-8840. And a couple of quotes on this genetic mutation thing. Here is an evolutionary microbiologist by the name of James Shapiro. He is at the University of Chicago. And here's what he said. There are no detailed Darwinian accounts for the evolution of any fundamental biochemical or cellular systems, only a variety of wishful speculations. That is a guy that believes in evolution. He is a microbiologist. Don't take my word for it. I am a philosopher and a theologian by training. This guy is an evolutionary microbiologist. I read that again. James Shapiro, University of Chicago, one of the leading institutions of higher education in the world. There are no, and I emphasize the word no, there are no detailed Darwinian accounts for the evolution of any fundamental chemical, biochemical, or cellular systems. Only a variety of wishful speculations. Now, here's a scientist from the University of Bristol by the name of Alan Linton. You'll hear what about bacteria? Bacteria evolve. That's terrific. Bacteria, they developed this resistance to antibiotics, and they're citing that as an evidence of the wonders of evolution. This thing is going to kill us if we don't stop it. Is now evolving, so we can't stop it, and that shows the wonders of evolution. Give me a break. But here's what Alan Linton said. Throughout 150 years of the science of bacteriology, there is no evidence that one species of bacteria has changed into another. None exists in the literature claiming that one species has been shown to evolve into another. So that's bacteria. That's the big one they always trot out. And here's a guy, University of Bristol. He's a scientist. And I repeat, there is no evidence in 150 years. They've been studying bacteria for a century and a half. There is no evidence that one species of bacteria has changed into another. None. Zero. Zip. So Linton adds this, there is no evidence for evolution throughout the whole array of higher multi cellular organisms. No evidence means no evidence, nada, zilch, zippo. So bottom line, first law, second law, fossils and genes. Bottom line, the easiest verse in the Bible to believe is the first one of all. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. Well, let's go to the phones. Let's grab a call from Carol in Pontotoc, Mississippi. Carol, welcome to Focal Point. What's on your mind?
Thanks for having me, sir. I just want to make a comment.
Yes, sir.
I'm real big about debating evolutionists on the subject of evolution versus creation.
Uh-huh.
And it constantly seems like they always try to put us as creationists, especially if we come from a biblical worldview. They put us on the defensive, especially with the accounts of Genesis. One thing I found very useful in my debates, though, is to make them go on the defensive about the beginning of their theory. Most theories that they have is something known as abiogenesis, and they have a few different theories about it, but pretty much it all comes down to their theory is that in the primordial soup you had some inorganic chemicals just floating around, not doing anything, and their theories try to explain how they just kind of bounced together, and after millions of years or so, they just started forming single-cell organisms.
Mm-hmm.
I find it's really easy to study into their theories about that and prove them false because there's many logical fallacies to begin with, and then there's biological fallacies that I forgot what year it was, but it was just proved that organisms could just pop out of nowhere. I forgot the name of the scientist, but they used to believe that mice would just pop out of bags if you put rice in there, but they just proved that fairly quickly. But if you actually get into a conversation with a person who believes in evolution about abiogenesis, they usually just get frustrated or they can't give a satisfactory answer about it. But that's just what I was wanting to share with everybody.
Yeah. All right. Well, listen, I appreciate that very much. Thank you. Thank you for that. Great contribution to the conversation. Let's grab a call from Jerry in Grand Rapids, Michigan. By the way, don't forget, you can catch us audio and video streaming at afr.net, any place in the world. Live streaming audio and video, afr.net. We've got podcasts. We post these segments as soon as they're recorded on our website and on YouTube. We've also got apps for the iPhone, the iPad, and the Android. Jerry, Grand Rapids, Michigan, what's on your mind?
I'm not a scholar in this by any means. But a few years ago I was thinking about this, and I got thinking to myself, we've all been taught that we evolved from monkeys and apes and all this stuff, and as you think that through a little bit, it occurred to me, it's like, well, how come we still have monkeys and apes?
Yeah. It's a good question, isn't it?
It seems like if we evolved from those, they wouldn't exist anymore. We'd be in this state now. And
they'd all be replaced by the superior life form.
Right, and it's just another empty hole in their argument that they can never deal with. But
all right, very good. All right,
okay.
Jerry, listen, I appreciate that. Thank you for that. Let's go to Frank in Owensville, Kentucky. Frank, Owensville, Kentucky, welcome. What's on your mind?
Oh, thank you for taking my call, Brian.
Yes, sir.
I know that God is a faith God, and the just shall live by faith. And also, Psalms 104. Anybody that doubts God needs to read Psalms 104. And that'll solve the problem of evolution.
Mm-hmm. Now, what's the essence of Psalm 104?
It tells you about his creation.
Ah, okay.
Yeah. It tells you about the world that God has spun into space and nothing that's hold it up. But see, God spoke those things by faith. He's a faith God.
Mm-hmm.
He didn't do anything without faith.
Well, there you go. I'm looking at it, Frank. He set the earth on its foundation so that it should never be moved. You covered it with the deep as with a garment. The water stood above the mountains. At your rebuke they fled. The sound of your thunder they took flight. The mountains rose. The valleys sank down. You set a boundary that they may not pass so that they might not again cover the earth. And then it talks about the moon for the seasons, the sun, it's time for setting. The grass grows for the livestock. All of this from God's creative hand. All right, Frank, thank you for that. Let's go to Chuck in Kewanee, Mississippi. Chuck, welcome. What's on your mind?
Well, the guy from Michigan asked my question, how come there's still monkeys?
Yeah, that's a really good question. If everything's supposed to be onward and upward and we leave behind all the lower forms that kind of by definition, they weren't able to survive. The survival of the fittest, they weren't fit. That's why we have the more if they weren't able to survive, if it survived, how come they're still around? I thought you said it was only the fit that survive, and that's how you get more complex life forms. So how do these unfit species manage to survive? All right, that's a great call, Chuck. I appreciate that. Ken, Darlington, South Carolina. Ken, welcome. What's on your mind?
Hi, Brian. What a privilege to be able to speak with you today.
Thanks for calling.
You have hit on one of my favorite topics, the creation versus evolution, and I just wanted to point out one thing that's sort of popped in my head over time. They claim that in order to survive, that a species has had to evolutionize. And I always think about simple things like when a cow has a calf, and that calf has to have milk to survive. And I always wonder what it is that the evolutionist thinks that calf would have done when it was born if the mother didn't already have milk. That if evolution was why the mother, got to a point where she was,
and you have an even more foundational question. I mean, we know how living things reproduce through having sex. You got some that use asexual reproduction, but what a lot of people don't realize is, okay, if these animals, these increasingly complex life forms, if they can only have offspring through sex, then you have to have two of these organisms have to magically evolve at precisely the same time, at precisely the same location, on the same spot on the globe. I mean, it's just fantastic. The chances of that happening are so astronomical. That would truly, indeed, be a miracle of staggering proportions. All right, Ken, great call. Thank you for that. Focal Point AFR Talk. We'll be back after the news. Don't go anywhere. You're listening to Focal Point AFR Talk. Back to the news.